video, I'm going to be showing you guys the top 5 soul laners as of right now, as the current day. This should be uploaded on the 4th of February. In Season 8, we're going to show you the top 5 gods plus a few honorable mentions, along with every single build that you should be going on these gods, or at least you should be considering. And yeah, I promise that if you play these gods and try and prioritize them in this order, plus use these builds, you're going to be doing very, very well in Season 8 ranked. So, like always with these videos, if you have a god that's, if I have somebody at number 2 that you'd rather have at number 5, or if your honorable mention is maybe your number 3 or number 2, that's fine. Keep playing whatever you're having success with and whatever you like to play. This is just more like a general guideline for what, a pro player thinks is pretty good right now. And as always, if you have any thoughts or any discussion you guys want to talk about in the comments about what you guys think and the builds and stuff like that, then feel free to comment down below. But other than that, I just want to get right into it so we can start going with it. So you guys know how I usually do it. I start out at number 5. So coming in at number 5, we're going to be having Cerberus. I think Cerberus is very good right now. He was pretty good at the end of last season as well, but he's just a little bit better with some of the magical items right now and a lot of the variety that he has in his build path. So you can go for a lot of different starter items on him. I've been messing around with even skipping my starter item and buying something later on in the game. Tainted Steel works really well with his passive into any healer. Like, let's say you're playing against a Camo in lane, you will absolutely destroy the Camo with a Tainted Steel. Warrior's Axe is your go-to almost always on a lot of characters, but it works really well on Cerberus as well, especially the upgrade later on in the game. Once you get that Sundering Axe, you're going to be one-shotting people, and you're going to be very, very tanky as well. You could also go the Vampiric Shroud route if you're really trying to sustain up in lane. You already have a lot of healing on Cerb because you're passive plus your heal off your 3, and you're going to out-sustain a lot of people, so you don't really need to go this route a lot of the time, but it's something that you can definitely consider. And then that's pretty much it. There is something you can go Warding Seagull. I usually don't start this at the beginning of the game, but you can if you're against a Guardian or a Mage in lane. This is going to be your magical protection item. And next patch, it's actually going to have physical protection on it, which is really nice. And the reason I really like going it is because later on in the game, you can go something called Infused Seagull. It doesn't actually show, but you guys have seen it on my YouTube. It's basically like a mini Pridwin proc. It's insane. So no matter what starter item you go, you're going to be going Purple Boots always as your first one. You could go cooldown boots, but I just prefer Purple Boots. It's always better for these Guardians in lane. Gives you more power, gives you more sustain. The build that I've been going lately that I really like is this route. You go into the mystical if you're against a physical, except usually it works out that you can just rush binding because it's so cheap. So usually you're going to be going buying first, then your mystical. Hopefully you're against a physical. If you're not against a physical, then you wouldn't go the mystical here. You can go something else here. You could probably even go like a Void Stone or something like maybe just like a hybrid item like a Urchin or something. But for the most part, it's still fine to go mystical even against a magical. And then you're going to go straight into a Pridwin. Now, the reason I like this build more than like a traditional breastplate build is because Pridwin is such a nice item on a lot of characters, but it's especially good on Cerb. And if you go breastplate early on in the build, you don't really want to go a Pridwin because then you're just going to be overcapping CDR once you have your blue buff, or once you go like something like a Spear of Death or something like that later on in the build. And what I've been doing is I've been skipping my starter item and going Infused Seagull at this point. This was like a really sick build on Cerberus, I feel like, and you do a ton of damage and are very tanky, and you can even go a last item Mantle if you want. You could fit in a Spear of Deso there at the end just because it's really good right now because of the insane passive 8-second reduction on your ultimate cooldowns. You can get away with a lot of stuff here. Ethereal, Spear of the Magus if you want something, if you want a little bit more damage. If you want like a bruiser item, then Ethereal is the route. But this is the build I've been loving right now on Cerberus. So this is something you can go. But you can also always go the traditional route of just like a breastplate if you're not really a fan of the Pridwin build. You can just go something like a breastplate binding into Void Stone. This is more of the traditional build on Cerb. And you're going to do a lot of work with this, don't get me wrong. Go like an Ethereal into a Mantle. And then maybe sell your boots for like a Spear of Death or something like that. But you got to keep in mind that if you have upgraded blue buff, it gives you 20% CDR. So I don't really like this this traditional build, or I don't really like going like just pure CDR on characters right now, just because of how much CDR you can get from your blue buff. So, but this does work, and you will have a lot of success with this. And of course, our starting relic is always going to be Blink, unless they have enough CC where they can actually kill you in lane. Then you want to go something like Beads. But if you don't have Beads, then you want to either go Beads. Thorns is still a viable option in general, but especially on Cerberus, just because you have so much magical penetration that it makes your Thorns hit very, very hard. So that's something that you can go. But then you can also go these other routes. You can go Sunder if they have a lot of shields, like say they have a Nike, or they just have like a Cuckoo that's getting a big shield off his transformation. You could also go Sprint if you're just trying to help out the team and stuff like that. But usually these 3 relics are going to be pretty standard on Cerberus. So yeah, that's Cerberus at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have Guanyu. Can I type his name in? Guanyu. Guanyu was very, very good at the end of last season, probably one of the best warriors. He's fallen off a little bit just because healing has gotten nerfed, and like Cat Shield got a little bit of a nerf, and it's kind of a buff, just an adjustment, I'd say. But yeah, there's also some matchups that are really hard. Like Cuckoo is a very good pick right now, and it's very hard to play Guan into Cuckoo. You get bullied pretty hard. And stuff like Cerberus can kind of bully him as well. So just something you have to keep in mind. But he's still very, very strong. He's still going to come into those team fights absolutely insane and can carry them very easily. Warrior's Axe is pretty much the most viable option and probably the go-to almost always on Guanyu. So that's something. Oh, I forgot to show you what potions to get. Basically, you just go what you did last year. You just go Chalice plus either 3 multi-pots or 4 multi-pots, or you can go extra health pots. Really, it's just preference. Usually you go multi-pots if you want to fight early. You go health pots if you're just trying to like chill in the lane and get to your first blue buff respawn. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. Warrior's Axe is pretty much always what you want to go on Guan. There's not really anything else that you really want to go besides maybe next patch. You can maybe go Warding Seagull. That's something you can look towards for next patch, but he's not going to be good with Mannequins. You don't really want to go in on him. And Mannequins is also getting nerfed next patch, so it's something that we want to be more consistent with. So it's either Warrior's Axe or perhaps Warding Seagull in the next patch. Of course, you're going to be rushing into Warrior Tabai. Always go Warrior Tabai on Guan. You don't need Tank Boots, and you don't need Teleria or any of that nonsense or Ninja Tabai. Warrior Tabai is very, very good with him because it's going to be your pretty much your only damage for all of the game because the rest of your build is going to be pretty tanky. When you're against a physical, always go into Breastplate first. Now, I know I said that I don't like rushing CDR right now because of the items, but Guan is the only exception just because he uses so much mana. He's a very, very mana-hungry god. He's a very spammy god. So Breastplate, the fact that you get 20% CDR and all that mana is actually necessary on Guan, but only Guan, so that's the only exception. And you're going to go into Genji's as well. He's just a full CDR mana hungry god, and this build, this core of your build just makes you absolutely insane. Makes you have so much CDR. Your ult's always going to be up. You're going to rotate to those team fights and just spam your heals on everybody and feel very strong. And because you're spamming your heals, you're going to be going into a CAD shield. Last patch, people would be going Sledge, but I don't really like Sledge anymore, so I think that's something you should skip there. And now you can kind of go wherever you want with the build. Urchin is probably a good option a lot of the time here, just so you can get a little bit of defense for each side of the thing here, the magical and physical damage. And then you want to upgrade your Warrior's Axe into Sundering Axe. And then you could sell your boots for pretty much whatever you want. It's kind of situational. If they have an ADC with crit, then Spectral is probably going to be a very viable option for you. You don't really ever want to go damage on Guan. There's no like real damage item that you want for the most part. Runeforge is something that you could look to go for a damage item. It's kind of a bruiser item because it gives you a little bit of health. But it's really nice on Guan because he procs it off his 2, he procs it off his ult, and stuff like that. But for the most part, you're going to just be going pure tank, and you're just going to sit around your team, spam your heals, spam all your CDs just because you have so much CDR and own with that. Blink is very, very good on Guan. It's good on pretty much everybody, like I always say. And then if they have a lot of CC, you could look to go Beads. If they don't have a lot of CC and you just want to dive them really hard, Thorns is still viable, like I said. You can also go more of a peeling route if you want to go like a Sprint or a Shell to help out your team. If you're going to be sticking around them more, kind of death balling, then that's something you can go. But, Blink Thorns, Blink Beads, maybe Blink Shell is probably your go-tos on Guan. And this is pretty much the go-to build on him, and you should be doing a lot of work. If you don't want to go the Urchin route because you feel like you're not going to stack it, then you can always just go like a Mantle here, and then you'll be max CDR without your blue buff. You're not always going to have your blue buff. You don't really always need your blue buff because of the build, because you have so much mana in MP5. So yeah, that's something to think about as well. Moving on, we are going to have Sun Wukong at number 3. Sun Wukong didn't really see any like change to the build. As I say that, I gotta clear this because I gotta mix up the build a little bit from the last time I made a video on him. His items really stayed the same, so he's still very strong for that reason, because part of the reason Guan was so strong, or not Guan, Wukong was so strong is because of his build path and how he could be really, really greedy with his damage and everything like that while still being very safe in lane, safe in the team fights, very hard to kill. The only thing I would say is that Bluestone's probably one of the only characters that Bluestone's actually pretty strong on. Other than that, you can always go something like a Warrior's Axe. I was also messing around with something like Eye of the Jungle and then going Protector of the Jungle later on in the game. That's something you could mess around with, but if you're watching this video just so you know really what to go in your ranked games right now, then I would go either Bluestone Pendant if you're in a matchup where you won't get bullied. Like let's say you're playing against a greedy character, you're not versus like a Cuckoo or an Arthur or something like that, you can go Bluestone. But if you are versus like a Cuckoo or an Arthur, maybe look to go the Warrior's Axe, and of course the 3 health pots and the health chalice. Then, of course, we're going to be going into Warrior Tabai, always on Wukong, and then into the Soul Eater. So something you got to keep in mind with this build is it's very, very strong. You heal a lot and you do a lot of damage with this. You can kill the jungler very easily if you full combo them, but you are pretty squishy, so you have to be careful of those ganks, and you have to be careful with the 1v1. You're going to need to heal off the wave a lot. You got to use your sustain to your advantage. So the difference in the build this season is going to be Shifters. Shifters is a very good item now. I highly recommend looking to go this in a lot of your ability-based warrior builds, or maybe even just your auto attack warrior builds. It's very strong. You now get 65 physical protections when you're below 75% health, and don't get that's not it. You also get 40 magical protections as well. And then when you're above 75% health, you have 70 power. It's just a really strong item because it gives you that power when you need it, when you're just kind of running around the map, clearing camps and PvEing with that extra power. You're going to be full health most of the time. And then when you're getting to an actual fight, you're going to do a lot of damage up front, and then you're going to get low, and you're going to have those extra protections to help you survive. So it's just a really strong item for that reason. And this sort of build can kind of go different ways. These are the first 3 items are pretty much your core. But then from here, it can kind of go wherever you want it to. Honestly, I like Glad Shield. The combo with Shifters is really nice. Gives you a little bit of health, which you are lacking in this build so far. And then you can go whatever you want from here. I personally like just going straight up damage from this point. So going something like an Erendite here is always nice. And then rounding out the build with like a Mantle. You keep in mind that you're not going to have a lot of magical protections with the build, but the thing about Wukong is that you're going to go Blink Beads anyway. These are basically your go-to relics every single game. You don't really want to go anything other than this because you really want beads on Wukong just because you're going to be building a lot more damage on him. And honestly, you could even, with this build, if you're really comfortable with Wukong, you could honestly skip the Mantle last item and go something like the Heartseeker. Keep in mind, I have 6 items here, and I'm not upgrading either of these. Actually, you would be upgrading Warrior's Axe. You're just not upgrading Bluestone. I don't think Bluestone upgrades are really worth it. I'd rather have a real item, but Warrior's Axe is definitely worth the upgrade. So you'd be going Sundering Axe and then not going that item if you were to go the Warrior's Axe route. But I'm usually going Bluestone. And then if I do go Bluestone, I sell it late game for like either a Heartseeker if I'm really comfortable, feeling good about the game, or I just go a defense item here. If you're getting absolutely railed by their mage and you really just don't know how to like juke his abilities, don't know really how to like just dive him without taking too much damage, then you can go something like a Cadgeot here, give you a little bit of magical defense, also increase your healing from your Soul Eater and your ult and stuff, and you'll be pretty comfortable sitting there. You're going to be pretty tanky actually with this build, at least hard to kill, maybe not very tanky. You don't want to just sit there and run at them, just holding W key at their carries, but you do want to try and kill them if that makes sense. You're not really trying to tank them, you're just trying to one-shot them, blink on them, all in them, and see if you can do your thing. If you can't, then Bird out or Ox out, and yeah, some other viable options. You could still go Sledge, like I said. That's still a viable option on Wukong. We'll throw in the Mantle down here as well. The Heartseeker if you prefer that damage route. And if they have a lot of healing, it's really hard for you to dive them because they're just out sustaining your damage, then look to go Brawlers. Brawlers is still really good, and it's a very good item on Wukong because you can proc it very easily with your AoE abilities, with your long range abilities like your Cudgel. And it also is going to give you that flat pen and extra power to just, one-shot their carries. And if they're healing a lot, then definitely look for the Brawlers route. But a build like this would be pretty good for Wukong. Now moving on. We will have King Arthur at number 2. Arthur is still very, very strong. Doesn't lose any matchup for the most part. I mean, he kind of loses to Cuckoo and a little bit to Guan sometimes, but for the most part, you're stalemating those matchups anyway, and he's still very, very strong. He's just a very hard character to gank, very hard to kill. Warrior's Axe is the go-to on Arthur always. You do not need damage on him. Bluestone can work on him, but I just don't think it's worth it because the upgrade for Warrior's Axe is just so much better for Arthur. Next patch, you could look to go Warding Seagull. Like I said, I actually think that next patch it's going to be even better because they're adding physical protections to the base of it. And I really think that both these upgrades are a little bit underrated right now. But again, that's usually into like a magical matchup right now, and then maybe next patch we'll mess around with it more and see if we like it. But that's pretty much the only viable start on him. Tainted Steel I haven't really messed around with on Arthur, but I just don't see it being worth it too much. It could work into characters like Kama or maybe something like Guanyu. So I'll throw it in there but it's more of a niche scenario item, like I said. Tank Boots always on Arthur. You can go for the Warrior Tab by route, but Tank Boots are just so strong. Like I said, you don't really need to build damage on Arthur to do damage. And if you just survive in every lane, you survive in every team fight, you're going to get so much damage off by spamming your abilities that you're going to be really strong. It's pretty much the same build as last patch. And again, you're going to be going the Health Chalice and the 3 multi-pots or the 3 health pots, whatever you want. Usually the go-to on Arthur is Beads Blink. It kind of was like that before, and now that Thorns is even worse. You kind of just always want Beads Blink for the most part. You could maybe go Thorns if they have very, very, very little CC, but, Beads Blink. If they have little CC and you don't really want Thorns either, maybe you could go something like a Sunder. Blink in, Sunder, like somebody, like a high priority target. Get all your damage off, take them into the air, and you're going to do a lot of damage to them. So I think that could work, but For the most part, you can kind of just go with the blink beads always. You're going to be going the boots into guy, which is the same as last patch. Now, this is where you can kind of just do it based on your preference. I actually have been messing around a little bit with Shifter Shield, and I think Shifter Shield Arthur can work, but I think the more go-to option is going to be Glad Shield, so you can get a little bit of CDR. Kind of a similar build to last patch. Basically the exact same. I mean, all these items are still really good. You're going to be going into the Pridwin. Pridwin is such a nice item on Arthur. Gives you that CDR so you can spam really hard in the team fights, which is good for him. Again, you do get 20% CDR from your blue buff, but you're not just buying Pridwin for the CDR. It's more about the passive. It's just such a strong passive for us tanks. You shouldn't be having to worry too much about their magical damage yet. Maybe you are, just because mages are pretty ridiculous this season. If you are, then you're going to have to go into the Oni Hunters here. If you don't have to worry about their magical damage, then go the Void Shield, then the Oni Hunters. But just whatever order that you have to do it in that game. This is a very strong build on Arthur. Again, you have to worry about upgrading your Warrior's Axe because we're kind of lacking a 6 item now if you're upgrading your items. So if you're trying to upgrade your Warrior's Axe, which you probably should be most games, then you should upgrade that and then sell your boots for Void Shield later on in the game. With the passive from Warrior's Axe or Sundering Axe plus Void Shield plus Glad Shield plus your Pridwin damage plus all your base damage from Arthur and how tanky you are going to absolutely one-shot people late game with this build. As long as you can keep your charge up. That's the only thing you got to be careful with Arthur is that a lot of times if you're like in a game and it's like a freaking clown fiesta, it's an arena game and people are dying, everybody's dying on cooldown, lots of kills, 30 kills by the 10-minute mark, then you got to worry about getting your charge up because every time you die on Arthur, you reset your charge. So keep that in mind. But yeah, this would be the build for Arthur and pretty similar to last season. Just worry about that Warrior's Axe. Try and upgrade that instead this season. So that was number 2. And before we go to number 1, we have 3 honorable mentions as always. Well, we don't always have 3, but we do today. So the 3 honorable mentions that I have are actually going to be 3 assassins. Now, the thing about these 3 assassins is that they could probably be in the top 5. For example, the first guy that we're going to talk about is Set. And personally, my Set, like where I would put him probably top 3. He might be my number 1 maybe. But the thing about Set is that he requires some level of like personal preference to him. You got to play him a lot to really be good at him and understand him very well in the team fights and how to play him. So I don't think for everybody he's going to be a top 5. That's why I don't have him in the top 5. And the same goes for my Rat. I also really think Rat is a really good god if you're really comfortable on him, and he's a very good tank, very good soul laner. Doesn't lose a lot of matchups. He can kind of just stalemate a lot of matchups, and then he can just rotate to these team fights and be an absolute menace diving the backline. But again, I don't think everybody is that comfortable on him, so that's why he's more of an honorable mention than he is in my top 5. So I'll show you guys the build for all 3 of these gods. The third god that we're going to talk about is Camazotz. So first I'll show Set. The build for him really hasn't changed at all. He can go with a lot of different starter items. Warrior's Axe if you're in a matchup that's going to bully you. If you're not in a matchup that's going to bully you and you maybe want to bully them, then you can go into a Mannequin Scepter. It's pretty good on him. It is getting nerfed next patch, so we'll have to mess around with that a little bit more to see if it's still viable. But those are probably the go-to starter items on him. You could go for a Bluestone just because it's a lot of poke damage early game, but that's a very greedy start, and you're only really ever going to be able to go that into like maybe a low-pressure Guardian or something like that where you're just going to focus on clear. So yeah, for the most part, it's either Warrior's Axe or Mannequin Scepter. The build, pretty much the same as it was last patch, like I said. The only difference is that Berserkers is going to be a little bit different now since it gives you less prots, so that's something you have to keep in mind. Warrior's Axe is going to give you a little bit of tankiness still, and it's kind of a nice combo having all this damage from Berserkers plus Warrior's Axe. You know, you're going to be able to one-shot people, but you got to be a little bit careful of tanking too much damage, especially since you're going to be going Frostbound next. You don't really have a lot of tankiness in this build, but you do have a lot of aggressiveness and a lot of ways to kill people if you just run them down. So keep that in mind. Build pretty much the same from here. You go Cad Shield into a Mantle, and then you're going to upgrade your Warrior's Axe into the Sundering Axe. Your 2 relics are always going to be, Beads and Thorns. I typed in blue because it's the color blue. And Beads and Thorns. You could go for a different relic here instead of Thorns just because Thorns is a little bit worse now, but I still think you kind of need Thorns on Set to dive correctly to be able to actually dive their ADC and kill them, because late game they're just going to have so much damage for you that's going to be a little bit tough. You kind of want that Thorns to survive. But if not, Thorns, you kind of just want to go something that's going to help you dive really hard because that's what Set does. You don't really want Shell because that's more of a peeling relic. If you're going to try to dive really hard, maybe a Horrific and upgrade that bad boy later on in the game so you can Horrific their ADC with it so you can just kill them. If they have a little bit of healing, then you can look to maybe go a Curse Stonk and upgrade that as well. It's going to help you do a little bit more damage and, just help you dive them, especially into their ADC who probably has lifesteal. But the build's pretty much the same. You could also look to go a Toxic Blade. I really like Toxic Blade on Set just because it allows you to dive that ADC with lifesteal, like I said. It gives you a little bit of damage with that flat pen. So it's definitely a nice option on him. And then Stone Cutting as well right now is pretty sick. If you're more comfortable with that, maybe you can go like a Warrior Tabi Berserkers into a Stone Cutting. It's a very greedy build, but you are going to do a lot of damage with it with how cheap Stone Cutting is. It's a very viable option in Soul Lane, in my opinion, right now. And then also you could always go like a Sledge if you're still comfortable with that item in your build. And yeah. Something to keep in mind with all the builds is that it's a little bit weird right now because we have our starter items and the upgrades for them. So we're kind of like, we kind of basically have one less slot for our items. It feels a little bit weird, like I said. So some builds are a little bit different for that reason. So Rat is up next in the honorable mentions. Really, really think Rat is good. The thing about Rat is that all of his Acorns can work as well, besides crit Acorn in solo. You don't really want to go crit Acorn, but his green Acorn can work. His stun Acorn can work, and even, well, not even, especially his... where can I even find it? Here is it. Why can't I see the thick bark? It's not showing up over here. It's so weird. And especially this item. This is the one that I almost always go. Thick bark acorn is just so nice. Having that double 2 is crazy good for trades and also crazy good in the team fights and just clearing the jungle and stuff like that. Especially because it works really well with the rest of the items that you're going to go. So with Rat, your starter item most of the time will be Warrior's Axe. You could go for pretty much everything. You could go Mannequin on him. You could go Bluestone. Next patch, you could probably go Warding Seagull and even Tainted Steel into some healers. He has a lot of variety in his build. It's definitely part of the reason I like him so much. But Warrior's Axe is going to be your go-to for most of the matchups right now just because it's just a little bit too good, and especially the upgrade. So then you're going to be going into Thick Bark Acorn into Glad Shield. I know Glad Shield probably thinking, oh, don't you want to get this item later on when you have more pots? The base stats are just really good, and it's really good for Rat as well. You want to be going kind of bruiser items on him. However, you could look to go Shifter's first item on Rat now just because it's so strong. You can kind of go both first, kind of just whatever you want to do. I personally prefer a little bit of the CDR and the health that I get from Glad Shield early game, but you can kind of do whatever you want. And then you're going to be going into Pridwin or a mana item here. Now, the thing about Rat is that he uses a lot of mana early game, especially with these 3 items. You don't get any mana or MP5. You have your blue buff, but you're still going to be spamming a lot, and you're going to be running out of mana pretty quickly. So if you want, you could go into like a Talisman of Energy here, so you can kind of fix that mana problem and then go into your Pridwin. Kind of transition you to that mid game a little bit better. And then you're going to be going a Void Shield here. Kind of round out the build. Very bruiser build. You're going to do a lot of damage with this. You're going to be very, very tanky. Your items synergize very well. Your Pridwin and Glad Shield off of the Prod Acorn are just so much better because you get a little bit extra pots for these item passives. And then also you're just like a bruiser character who has a lot of protections but also does a lot of damage with all this power and CDR in the build. So this would probably be the strongest build for the Thick Bark Acorn. You could also look to go a Frostbound like early on in the build, maybe 3rd or 4th item. It's a very strong item on Rat in my opinion. You can kind of just run people down. Allows you to dive their ADC pretty well as well because of the attack speed reduction. So that's a viable option. Stuff like Cad Shield is viable as well because you get healing from your Acorn. And if you have any other healing or lifesteal on your team, Cad Shield is definitely something that you should look to hover over. And also the blades. Where are the blades at? Witchblade and Wingblade. You can kind of fit these into any build these days. I don't really have it as a core. I haven't really shown it for the other builds just because I don't really build it every game or really think about it for a lot of the builds. But it is something that like you definitely should consider because it's just very cheap defensive options for, you know, Witchblade obviously for ADCs and then Wingblade for magicals or anybody that's just going to rely on their souls like a Nemesis or something like that. You could throw this into a build and basically never die to a Nemesis and yeah, you'll be feeling pretty good. And then of course Mantle is always a viable option plus Spirit Robe. Mantle, Spirit Robe are always viable options if you need a little bit more defense. So the only awkward part about this build again is that, you know, you want to have Warrior's Axe upgraded a lot of the time, so you're gonna have to forego one of these items. It's probably gonna have to be the Void Shield so that you can upgrade Warrior's Axe into Sundering Axe because you don't really want to ever sell your Prod Acorn, unfortunately. I guess there are some scenarios where you could sell it. You know, I think maybe Void Shield plus an upgraded Warrior's Axe might be a little bit stronger than having your Acorn once you get your 1500 pot, but it's hard to say. It's pretty close. Just having that double 2 and those extra 10% prots and everything is pretty nice to have all game. So yeah. I haven't really gotten to a lot of those scenarios, I promise. Like every Rat game that I play, I literally just win in 15 minutes. So I don't even get to those scenarios where I can even sell my Acorn, to be honest. Kama is coming up next. Now, I would have had Kama maybe top 5, but I actually kind of learned something the other day against him. If you go Tainted Steel against Kama, he feels really, really bad in lane. Like, he just doesn't heal very much. I did it on Serb, and he was literally just not healing at all. I was healing so much more from his healing than he was himself. So that's something you got to keep in mind as Kama, but regardless, Kama is still very, very strong. Doesn't really lose any matchup in lane because he can just kind of sustain up and sit there at his tower line and do whatever he wants. The start's going to be Warrior's Axe a lot of the time. You can go Mannequin on him if you want to stomp the early game and you're into a matchup where you're going to be able to invade the blues and stuff like that. It's definitely viable, but I prefer the Warriors Axe, especially just for the upgrade. And then Bluestone's also a viable option on him, especially just because he has so much healing that even though this item's a little bit greedier and you're going to get poked out a lot early game, Bluestone can work on him just because he has so much sustain, but usually you just want to go Warriors Axe or Mannequin. You're going to be going into the Warrior Tabi, of course. On Rat, I forgot to show. On Rat, you want to go Blink or Beads and Thorns, or Blink and Thorns if they have no CC, or like Bead Sunder. Like Rat has a ton of options for his relics, so that's something to keep in mind. Kama, however, is kind of going to be the same every game. It's going to be Blink Beads or Blink like Horrific. I don't really think you should go Thorns on Kama just because you have your ults. A lot of times when you're diving the backline, you're going to go into the air with your ult and try and keep going, and it's just kind of not a great combo. You could Thorns and then wait till it runs out and then go into the air, but a lot of times people are going to DPS you down before you can even do that. So the build with Kama is actually a little bit funny. You're going to be going Soul Eater. You're going to double down on your healing. I know it sounds crazy because, you're kind of just, if they build anti-heal, which they probably will against a Kama, you're going to get reduced, but it doesn't matter. You do so much healing, you do so much damage with this build that I think it's worth it anyway once you get this fully stacked, especially because the out-of-combat healing is insane. Like, if you walk up to a wave at, like, 10% HP and jump on the entire wave with your 3, you'll literally go back to 100% HP, like, between a fight, so pretty much a similar build to Wukong as well. You're going to be going into Shifters. Cam is kind of the same way where you want to go a little bit more damage to be a little bit useful, but you can kind of do whatever you want. I personally think Sledge is still good on him. Just him, though, I really think that it's just a very nice transitional item for him, kind of like a hybrid item. You don't really want to go Glad Shield here because you're going to be using a lot of mana, like I said, and at least Sledge gives you a little bit of mana. Kind of transition your build a little bit, gives you a little bit of health as well. But again, you kind of want to go more damage on a character like this. So I'd probably round out the build with a CAD Shield. You could go CAD Shield's 3rd or 4th if you're just trying to really stomp the lane and just heal a ton. But that's a viable option, and round out the build with an Erendite. And this would be our build. It's kind of like Wukong, like I said. Cam is just a safe character. You blink in, use all your damage, go into the air, and hopefully you have killed somebody. If you haven't killed somebody or gotten both their carries very low or something like that, then maybe the fight was pretty bad to begin with. So pretty much the go-to build if you want defense. Mantle is always an option. Spectral right now is very, very strong, especially because Thorns is a little bit worse. So people are building crit a lot of the time in ADC, so you definitely want to think about going the Spectral route. And then, you always have these other viable options like Glad Shield if you want to go like a damage / defense item, a little bruiser route. And then you can also go for Heartseeker. Again, you would be selling your boots for this Erendite. This is where the Erendite would be, and you would be upgrading your Warrior's Axe. Always upgrade your Warrior's Axe to Sundering Axe. It's very, very strong. I keep not doing it, but you guys get the point, right? You would just have Warrior Tabi. You would have upgraded your Warrior's Axe, and then once you can, sell your Warrior Tabi for Erendite later on in the build. So yeah, that's the awkward part about having this like reduced slot selection for our items. And then coming in at number 1, we have Cuckoo. You guys probably guessed it. Cuckoo is incredibly strong right now. It wins every single matchup, every single lane. He can go a few starter items. He can go Warrior's Axe. He can go Mannequins. He could honestly go Death Soul. It could work. I'm just saying it's a possibility. He just has a lot of viable options. He could go Bluestone. Next patch, he could probably even go Warding Seagull, if I can see it. Into physicals, into magicals, you could go Warding Seagull right now. Into healers, he could go Tainted Steel, and when he uses his 1 on them, they're literally healing for only 20% of their healing. It's crazy. He could go all these starter items, but like I said in the starter item video, Warrior's Axe is your go-to, and I think Mannequin can be a little bit more viable as well sometimes, but it is getting nerfed next patch. So your first item is always going to be boots, of course, and most of the time on Cuckoo it's going to be Warrior Tabi. Of course, go 3 health pots and 3 chalice or in a chalice or 3 multi pots. I actually like multi pots on Cuckoo because you fight a lot early game, and you're going to fight for pressure a lot of the time, and it's just really nice for him because it also gives him some healing from the mana conversion. But your relic is going to be Blink Beads or Blink Thorns, pretty much always. Those are pretty much always going to be your go-to relics, like everybody else. Beads is still going to be pretty good, especially if they have a lot of CC. And then maybe something like Horrific. If you want to go Horrific, it's going to be strong for diving their ADC late game. Warrior Tabi is very good, but you could also go Tank Boots on Cuckoo. Tank Boots Cuckoo is still pretty strong. I just prefer Warrior Tabi, especially with the rest of the build, since you're going to be going so tanky in the rest of your build. Mystical, always into Talisman. This is kind of just like the go-to build for me right now. I think it's very, very strong. You could look to go an Ansile here instead. Ansile is also a pretty good item right now. Gives you 60 power, which is crazy, but the only problem with this item that I see in my eyes is that you don't really get any prots from it. You get 30 prots and you get no health, so it doesn't really make you that tanky. So that's something you got to keep in mind and be careful with. I prefer Talisman of Energy route, especially if I'm going to be playing against good players who are good at mages. I think that maybe Talisman's going to be better than Ansile, especially because Cuckoo is going to be a little bit easier to kill in the team fights when you're diving, just because he falls off a little bit late game, so you kind of want that tankiness. So I go always into the Pridwin. Pridwin's an amazing item on Cuckoo. It's good on pretty much every tank, but it's especially good on Cuckoo just because he doesn't have to worry about mana problems, so he's kind of just chilling. And then also he also has 2 ults, so he can kind of always get it procced and always have that shield for running at people. Then you'll be going into a Void Shield and then upgrading your Warrior's Axe into Sundering Axe, and then selling your boots for either a Mantle, a Spirit Robe even. I personally actually like Spirit Robe a lot on Cuckoo. Kind of like when you blink engage and then get CC right after, the Spirit Robe passive is going to proc, and you're just going to take no damage as you dive the backline. It's going to be very, very strong. But you could always go that Mantle route, and then you could also go more damage if you really wanted to. You can go like an Erendite here. That's something that you could look to go, but I personally think like a pure tank build with a Pridwin and a Void Shield and the Sundering Axe is going to do more than enough for you late game. So I'd probably just have like a Spirit Robe here, something like that. And this is pretty much the go-to build on Cuckoo. You could try other stuff with like Glad Shield into Void Shield. Just go like a pure Bruiser route, but I personally think tank is the way to go on him, and you'll be feeling pretty good with this build, I think. Like I said, Cuckoo wins every matchup. That's why he's the #1 god right now for your ranked games. You win every matchup in lane, and you should be able to even carry the team fights in the mid game and maybe even late game. Honestly, this build right now, you're really hard to kill in the late game, so you actually do a lot of work. So, yeah, Cuckoo at #1. And that's it, guys. Those are 8 gods, our top 5, 3 honorable mentions that you guys should be playing in ranked right now with the builds. A lot of similar stuff to last season, but a lot of little changes here and there that we should definitely go over, that we went over in the video, and especially when it comes to like the starter items and the build relics and stuff like that. But yeah, those are the gods. A bit of a long-winded video, but I did it all in one take. I know I messed up here and there. Just kind of woke up just now, so bang out this video for you guys before you guys try and get too far into your ranked games, so you guys know what to play and know what to build. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and let me know what you guys want to see next. What season 8 content you guys want to see? A tier list maybe? Maybe I could do some coaching videos. I have an idea for a coaching video that somebody recommended to me that I really want to do. Yeah, let me know in the comments, and yeah, let me know what you guys are building and how you guys are enjoying season 8. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay safe and healthy as always. Just a little 32-minute banger for you guys. Yeah, I love you all. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.